Can a quick 1-minute live drawing be turned into a finished sketch? In this video, I'll take 4 of my figure drawings from a live model and push them further using digital tools, showing you my process, my challenges, and the benefits of working both traditionally and digitally using Photoshop and my Wacom Intuos free tablet. This is a time-lapse recording of me taking each quick gesture and developing it a bit further into a more finished figure drawing, the best that I can in the time I have. I've been doing live figure drawing practice with a live model on and off since I was 16 at college in England. Since then, I've attended hundreds of classes in person in my hometown in Brighton, but also in the Gold Coast, Australia, and I think Perth as well, possibly Melbourne. And since last year, I've also been taking classes online with the brilliant Carl Gnass. These 4 sketches I selected out of many 1 to 5 minute poses that I completed in my last week's session. I start each sketch quite lightly, with a low opacity set for my pencil brush. I first try to capture the gesture of the pose, usually with a few lines of action, and then I try to bring in simple shape ideas and their angles which make up each main body part. After that, I start to work more into the form of the figure and try to create some of the movement and rhythm I'm observing in the live model. This is very similar to how I've always worked traditionally, but instead with using pencil, you don't feel as restricted. And part of that fun is lost in digital drawing this old school way. But there are other benefits to doing these studies digitally which you don't have versus drawing traditionally. Some of those differences with digital live drawing include being able to save and keep different stages of your figure drawing, as you can duplicate each step onto a different layer and save it to compare to later. That's basically what I've done here, as to the left of the drawing I'm now working on, I've got my initial 2 to 3 minute gesture sketch to look back and compare to, and then I'm building on top of that here in the time-lapse, making the sketch more detailed. Also, when drawing digitally, you can use tools like the lasso tool, which allow you to circle certain areas on the canvas and move them to different positions on your canvas, and also scale or adjust how the selected area appears in shape and size. With traditional drawing, if you make a proportion mistake, you'll have to erase and draw all over again. It just saves a bit more time doing it that way digitally. One disadvantage of doing these live drawings digitally that I found personally is that I tend to want to zoom into detailed areas more, when it's best to keep zoomed out and work as much on the full figure all at once rather than honing in on individual areas of the figure drawing. When I'm doing these live drawings traditionally, I do find that I tend to keep a further distance between my eye and the paper or sketch pad that I'm drawing on, which allows me to keep working on the bigger shapes of the figure and drawing it and refining it more as a whole. The major benefit I've found with drawing traditionally is the simple feel and texture of traditional media. Honestly, there is nothing better than that for me. And having sheets of paper or pages in a sketchbook which you can refer back to and appreciate afterwards. People tend to prefer the original physical drawing more than a print, so it's always nice to be able to have these available, being archival, and being able to have them ready to be sold and pass on to new owners. This is another big benefit of having traditional drawings. I've made a more frequent return to live drawing since spring 2024 with the intention of also learning more about human anatomy so that I can draw and pose my own figures from imagination, which will improve my character concept art skills and storytelling with these characters. So far, I have mainly stuck to doing these weekly sessions digitally, as I will be doing my future character concept art digitally. But in the session after this one, I actually decided to return to traditional pencil drawing again. to have that gestural feel of moving the pencil across the page at different angles and holding it in different grips, which I can't achieve with my old school Wacom Intuos 3 stylus. In this second figure drawing, I decided to put a little more effort into developing the sketch further. I even go in there and give the eyes a little bit more detail and attention, and sometimes I don't always have time to do that. There's been times where I've just put in a few very, very quick lines that represent the eyes and put them in the same spot where the eyes would be. The third sketch I actually changed quite a bit. I don't think I got the proportions right initially, and as the sketch progresses I make more changes in order to get those proportions more accurate and on point, whilst also trying to keep that initial gestural flow of the sketch. I noticed here that the lower half of the figure is probably a bit too big for the upper half, and also after some feedback on my drawing, I knew I had to change the repeating shapes of the two arms and breast area, as it created an issue which drew your eye to that area, which wasn't intended by me at all. I keep making adjustments and changes to this sketch because something didn't quite feel right for me, and it might have been a case that my teacher Carl Ganassa had pointed out, where sometimes you just have to go in there and completely change the drawing up mercilessly as a whole, rather than trying to fix little areas. This is a lesson that Carl himself got from his own figure drawing teacher. You can see here that thanks to the digital tools in Photoshop, I'm able to quickly make proportional corrections on the figure, and in this case I'm creating more space for a longer torso to fit in. One other thing is that these particular live figure drawings that I'm doing in class are actually done online, which means you can have some camera distortion which affects how the figure appears on screen. You as an artist have to build the knowledge where you can identify this issue and make the correct proportional changes which you're not seeing on screen. This is pretty difficult to do, and I'm working on that myself with these figure drawings. Another thing I noticed was that I had originally drawn the head of the figure a bit too small compared to the size of the body, so I decided to make the change with the lasso tool and the move tool to get it right and in the correct position. With traditional drawing, I would have had to draw all the features in the face again, which can be frustrating if you feel like you've captured something about the model's facial features or expression quite well. Most artists nowadays draw digitally using an iPad or a Wacom Cintiq or other brands that have similar drawing tablets which more closely mimic actual pencil drawing, but I don't own any of those yet. I do intend to get an iPad at some point soon, and I will experiment with doing these digital live drawings there and see how it compares with doing my digital drawing by staring at my screen whilst my hand holding the stylus is out of sight. You might not know what I'm talking about here if you haven't tried drawing with one of those yourself. One great thing about taking these weekly classes with Carl is that at the end of each week, Carl will review my work and will give me critique on areas I can improve. As I mentioned previously, this is something I've never had before. And personally, I consider Carl to be a living master artist at figure drawing, so any professional artist who draws the figure can learn from him as I am, and I have to say it is an absolute privilege to be able to do so, which I'm very grateful for. Back to this third detailed figure drawing, I'm still making adjustments to the figure, especially in the torso area where the model creates this twist. I also start adding some tone to the drawing by increasing my brush size and lightly drawing over areas of shadow, and I make a conscious effort to wrap that tone following the form and contours of the figure in each area of the body. I then tighten up the model's stomach a little bit and work on adjusting the line weight of the strokes I've made around the figure and with the legs as they appeared a little thick in size. And with the fourth and final pose, I don't put as much work in as for the previous three, but I do build upon my initial gesture and make some light changes, such as adding a neck to the figure and increasing the size of the head and other small adjustments with the dynamics of the drawing. Here I decided to change the angle and size of the model's left leg, which seemed a bit too long on my first attempt to draw it. I do this by creating a lasso around the shape of the leg and then by using the free transform tool in Photoshop to scale and place the leg in the correct position. I then start erasing some of the original line work and make my way around the contour of the sketch to clean up some of the edges. I'm trying to make the pose more dynamic and have more of a rhythmic and fluid feel to it. And then I call it complete. So this is a lineup of the 4 figure drawing sketches I decided to develop further. 2 of them are slightly different in approach, focusing a bit more on adding tone, and the final 2 a bit more on line and contour. But I had sketched more during the live drawing session, some of which were only 1 to 2 minutes long. I decided to include these as a bonus section of the video towards the end. Instead of showing you the time lapse of how I drew them, I'm just going to reveal them and place them around the canvas so you can see every single sketch from that particular session. As you can see, most of these sketches are very loose and gestural and some are incomplete, but I've managed to capture some of the emotion and story in them. If you found this useful, let me know in the comments. Do you prefer drawing traditionally or digitally? And if you want to see more videos on life drawing and figure sketching and character design, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you all next time.